Hello, welcome back to Spooky Sunday. Yes, it has been way far too long, but oh well. Welcome back to Spooky Sunday 8. That's 8. I had to make sure I was being an idiot. Alright, so, if you're new here, 3 scary stories that will be rated on the board that does not fit. Ignore that fact. See here. All right, the video 1 out of 10, video 2 out of 10, video 3 out of 10. All right. Three videos rated out of 10. Don't mind how it's set up. All right? All right. Can't judge anymore. Gonna stop talking. This intro's already a minute long. We are getting into it.
When I was around 16, I remember my brother relentlessly hassling my parents for party money until he realized he needed to go make his own buck.
Hang on. 16-year-old, that deep of a voice. Jesus, okay.
The easiest job was at our local and shifty McDonald's,
Makes
but
sense.
he seemed happy enough with the amount of free time he had working part-time shifts. He met a colleague that he soon became close friends with. I'll call him Kevin for the sake of my story. Kevin was a little antisocial, a few years older than my brother, and came around the house more and more frequently. I think he lived for his job, as he was always in his McDonald's uniform. He was a typical nerd in regards to appearance.
Makes
He
sense.
wore thick framed glasses and picked at his skin as a nervous habit. In contrast to his demeanor, Kevin radiated with a sense of self-confidence. He spoke out of turn and always made witty remarks. Right off the bat, Kevin crossed some major boundaries in our household. The first instance was of him coming into my room unannounced. He just opened my door and walked in to check out band posters decorating my walls. "You got great taste in music," he hummed without even properly addressing me. Even though I was just sitting at my desk doing some sketches, it was still highly inappropriate of him to walk into my room of a girl that he barely knew, especially as a guest in my home.
Fair.
I was annoyed, yet I thanked him and respectfully asked him to leave, which he did and even apologized. Later that day, he sent me a friend request on Facebook, and I just left it pending.
This is an ad, isn't it?
There was a drastic change in his attitude towards me. Whereas he used to greet me in passing, he now just smiled at me without a word. One afternoon, while I was heating up a pot noodle, Kevin and my brother came.
A what? What is a pot noodle? Do you mean a pot of noodles? Ramen noodles? Spaghetti noodles? Elbow noodles? Not pot noodles. A pot of noodles. English.
Came home from work and had to pass through the kitchen to get to my brother's room in the basement. I greeted them both as usual, but only my brother greeted me. When they crossed into the hallway, I looked back and saw Kevin leering at me over his shoulder.
That's
I
a
didn't want to bother my parents with more complaints, so I just hid in my room and tried to avoid Kevin, despite it being nearly impossible while he was in my house. He sent me a message on Instagram a few hours later saying, "You look good in the kitchen. You should come work at ours."
um
Grossed out by the message, I immediately blocked his account.
good job.
But then he also tried reaching out to me on various platforms and bombarded my DMs with very disturbing messages that said things like, "I will have you.
That's a
Nobody would ever love you more.
Oh, that's
We
very forceful.
complete each other."
That's creepy.
In person, he never spoke another word to my face, but reported his true thoughts to me via Messenger at the end of every day. No matter how many times I blocked him, he just made new accounts and carried on with the cringe irritation. One early morning, I was up late in my room, listening to music while drawing portraits. When a song ended, I became aware of a rustling sound coming from my window. It was during autumn, and the yard outside was coated in leaves, which amplified the sound of someone walking directly outside.
Let me guess, it's
I
Kevin.
got up and turned down the music before going to check the window. But just as I was about to peek through the blinds, the window lifted up and a gush of wind sent my papers scattering. Kevin was standing outside.
Of course he
When
was.
he saw me, he quickly pushed one leg through the open window while acting drunk, then muttered an excuse that didn't sit well with me. "Your brother told me to sneak through here. He doesn't want me to wake your parents using the front door." There was no chance of this story being true, and I felt reasonably freaked out by him, trying to break into my room while everyone else was asleep.
Yeah, I would
When
too.
he tried to steer his torso through the gap, I grabbed a nearby pen and lunged it into his upper leg.
Jesus.
Adrenaline came over me, and I pulled the pen back before stabbing it into his leg again and again. I
I would
blindly
watch.
perpetuated the assault, ignoring his whelps of pain until he pulled himself back outside. I must have screamed while stabbing him because my parents bursted through the door and found me in a bewildered state. Kevin ran off, and the only evidence of him being there was the blood on my arm and the traces of it smeared across the window frame.
Oh,
We had the police come out to do a quick search around the yard.
911. Okay, I thought that said 911. Sorry, my bad. What? Dear God. Why? Well, I understand why you stabbed him. But why be obsessed with someone so much and you do this and just not. Ugh, doesn't make sense.
Where they made a nauseating discovery. There was a McDonald's takeaway bag tucked away beneath my window. It contained every item that you could link to an amateur murder or kidnapping. It was clearly a list of things that Kevin found on Google. For example, rope, duct tape, a bottle of chloroform, a pocket knife, and some misplaced cheeseburgers. My brother reassured me that he never instructed Kevin to enter through my room. He also quit his job a few hours later after finding Kevin at work, walking around with a limp. Both my brother and my parents wanted to file a restraining order against Kevin, but I felt too traumatized to even think about it. 3 months later, we moved a few towns over, and even years later, I still can't enter a McDonald's without associating the bright uniforms with Kevin outside my window.
Oh, that. Okay, that's not creepy at all. One moment. Okay, enough of that. Oh, shoot. So, story one. We'll give the very first one a 6. Because it was scary, kind of. Roll into this one.
This happened around 2 years ago, even though it feels like only yesterday. I was a senior in high school when my single mom began struggling financially. That being the case, I started applying for jobs in the area in hopes of helping out. The only place always open to new recruits was McDonald's. It was within walking proximity, so I put aside my common misconception of flipping burgers being a loser's job and collected my red and yellow uniform a few days after being hired.
What is that?
I should mention that, as a gay man, I'm big on fashion, and I altered the boring pastel outfit as best I could. Although there was little I could do about the actual clothing, I made the best of what I could do to add to my appearance, such as doing my makeup properly and wearing a fun little earring to complement my curly hair. I figured that I might as well look good while doing an arguably unpleasant job. This turned out to be a big mistake. It was probably a week into when I began noticing patterns in customers. Regulars were in abundance, and one face in particular never failed to demolish my mood. I'll be vague to avoid repercussions and simplify referring to this man as Steve. He was probably a few years older than me, skinny and short, so much so that I towered a little above him. Steve consistently dressed in all black and wore thick eyeliner. Unparalleled to his dark persona, he was overly friendly towards me. When the place was busy, he'd look over my attire with a lip curled in disgust and make quiet homophobic remarks. Yet, when nobody was around, he would awkwardly compliment me on my makeup and point out how he loved my piercings, even mentioning at times how he would give anything to see me outside of work clothes. I never acted on
That.
his comments, good or bad. He was just another customer to serve. He came in every morning for a coffee and a breakfast McMuffin, but his routine abruptly stopped after about a month or so. Then he reappeared in the creepiest way I've ever seen anyone behave. Steve would show up just after dark, right before my shift ended, and stand in the window, watching me at the front counter. I'd clock out and leave through the back door, only to find Steve had moved to the parking lot where he'd sit on his motorcycle, watching me leave. He knew which direction I walked each day, and always parked in a way so I had to pass by him. Then he'd follow the script of offering me a ride only for me to decline. This repeated every day for a scary amount of time. Foolishly, I didn't see Steve as any kind of threat, mostly due to his physical variation. Then one night, the same scenario played off again. He offered me a ride, and I gave a stern
Arrive?
no. Played off again. He offered me a ride, and I gave
What's arrive? I'm gonna stop making fun of people now, but good on you for rejecting their ride. That's like they planned on kidnapping you. Their remarks, the homophobic and just the creepy compliments, that's it's going just, I think, a little too far. Let's see how this plays out.
a stern no before walking on. I didn't even walk 10 steps before hearing the motorcycle engine behind me. I turned around, and Steve fortunately sped off down the road. When I got home that night, there was an envelope on my doorstep.
I'm assuming that's
I
supposed
opened
to be
it to
Steve.
find a pair of black Gothic spider earrings with a note signed off by Steve.
Knew it.
It was a weird gift, but I knew the message behind it was the real intention. He wanted me to know that he knew where I lived. The last thing I wanted to do was stress out my mom by telling her about a potential stalker. So I complained to management at work instead. They took it very seriously and changed up my shifts so that I never had to walk home after dark. It seemed to work out, and I didn't see Steve around anymore. Then, one night, my mom was working some extra late hours, and I was home alone. I was settling down to go to bed when a knock came from the front door. I made my way to look through the peephole and saw Steve standing motionless on the doorstep.
No thanks.
Immediately, my body began to tremble, yet my mind remained resilient. I decided not to deal with this on my own anymore, and I called the police on the spot, making sure to do it in a hushed tone so Steve wouldn't hear me. While waiting for the police, I heard Steve call my name as he began reciting a messed up profession of love.
Oh,
Nobody else in this town likes your kind, but I'll endure you.
that's
The
not
local police
creepy.
showed up in no time, and when a cop car came to stand still in front of the house, Steve attempted to make a beeline for his motorcycle parked in the driveway. At that point, I stepped outside and watched as they arrested him. He didn't speak a word while they cuffed him and just stared at me with an accusatory gaze. His bloodshot eyes gave the impression that he might have been under the influence of something, and they also found a weapon on him. When they loaded him into the back of the police vehicle, an officer approached me and told me that the motorcycle wasn't registered in Steve's name.
Oh, he's still.
It belonged to a girl who was reportedly missing. The most terrifying discovery then came when I found out that she previously worked at the same McDonald's that I worked at.
Oh, okay.
I remained working at that branch for another year and a half before starting college. In that time, I made sure to look out for my coworkers and always escorted the girls home or to their cars. I don't think anybody realized how dangerous a simple fast food job could really be.
Okay, well, that's mild, not mild. That's very creepy on every point. So I'll give it. I'll give it a 9 because that is generally scary. I feel like every town has a McDonald's. There's one in my town that's that way, somewhere that way, right? Yes, but it people, if you have an over obsession with someone, don't show it. If you want to ask them out, ask them out. Don't be creepy. creepy about it. Except, no, just be less creepy and very forceful of it. Please.
About 6 months ago, I got a job at McDonald's. I didn't feel like I needed a job, but I was nearing my 18th birthday, and my stepmom decided it would be a good way for me to learn accountability. Initially,
Of
I
course.
hated it, though I quickly realized that it was actually nice having and managing my own money. At times, I worked the drive-through, and that task felt extremely robotic, more so than being at the tills. I was programmed to speak my linear phrases into the microphone each time a car approached the sensor outside, and in a repetitive voice, gave me their order. As a big social personality, the impersonal environment made me feel a little disconnected. One night, I was working the night shift with my coworker, Evelyn. It was
Oh,
just past 2 a.m., and the only customers we saw were drunk, yet unproblematic college students grabbing a quick meal.
okay, that makes
Evelyn was
sense.
tending to the front counter when she looked over to me and said, "You look tired, Nathan. You can work the drive-through and have a rest. I doubt anyone's coming tonight." She was right about me being tired. I had a long day and was grateful for the opportunity to slack off a bit. I sloped off to the drive-through window and sat down watching the overhead camera screens. The parking lot was vacant, and the sensor cam mounted in front of the big menus outside showed an empty lane. I was lost in thought, staring ahead when the proximity sensor went off to signal movement at the menus. I recited the customary phrase, "Welcome to McDonald's. May I take your order?" It took me a while to break my trance-like state and register that a woman was standing in front of the camera.
No thanks.
She looked disheveled, but not homeless. She had long blonde hair and was dressed in a bright summer dress, despite it being freezing cold outside. Her hands trembled as she picked at her fake plastic nails while talking into the microphone. When I readjusted my headset, I could hear her placing an order. "Sorry, ma'am. Would you mind placing an order inside the store? We can only serve vehicles through the window." It was strange for her to even try to place an order out there to begin with, but I was more concerned about her being out in the bad weather. When she heard me speak up, she momentarily paused and inched closer to the speaker box, placing her face directly in the camera lens above it. I could hear her breathing through my headset, every wheezing breath more shallow than the last. Up close, I could tell she was of middle age, and her left eye was a bit milky, likely blind, judging from a quick glance. I was about to
No thanks.
politely repeat my request when she nodded, and the movement made her stumble backwards. She regained her balance and staggered to the front doors. I watched her on the second security screen enter through the door and approached Evelyn at the counter. By that time, the place was empty. The lady spoke to Evelyn and abruptly left without ordering anything. Curious and a little confused, I slipped from the high chair and peeked around the back to ask Evelyn what the lady wanted. She seemed a little hesitant to answer, but eventually told me that the lady had asked for me by name and claimed to be my mom.
Huh.
Now, Evelyn didn't know me very well, but was aware of the fact that my mom had passed away when I was very young. She told me that the lady gave her the creeps. I could smell alcohol on her breath. So she told her that nobody by that name works here, and the woman accepted it before calmly leaving. Although
Whew.
I shrugged it off, the situation made me feel uneasy, and when I retreated back to my post, I saw the woman standing outside the speaker box again. "Nathan, you can't hide from me. You can't hide from me," she softly shrieked into the microphone,
You might want to slow
salivating
down.
to the point of foam gathering in the corners of her mouth. She flailed her arms around so erratically, it knocked the wig from her head, exposing a bald scalp dotted with misplaced tufts of short hair. She began pacing up and down in front of the brightly lit menu boards. But since the camera on the speaker was so small, she kept moving out of view every time she marched left and right. I didn't know how to react, while already feeling so
Okay, hang on. This is
disconnected. Evelyn soon joined me in the room to observe the sheer insanity transpiring outside.
it's not
We
creepy
live in
at
a
all.
quiet countryside town, and she got really scared while stating that something like this had never happened before. She locked all the doors and called the police
As
while
a
I
reasonable
silently
person
watched
does.
in terror as the woman continued with her meltdown. When the police showed up, they escorted her away. But since she was so polite and collected upon arrival, they didn't have any reason to make an arrest. The night was uneventful after that, and when 7 a.m. finally came around and coworkers showed up to relieve us from our shifts, I felt immense relief. Exhausted and admittedly unattentive, I walked across the parking lot and climbed in my truck. I turned on the ignition, not noticing the figure sitting on the edge of my truck's hood, and only when I pulled out of the parking spot, making the person fall backwards, did I notice it was the woman. She picked herself up quickly and yelled profanities, punching the bonnet with her fists and making dents in my already busted up pickup. She threw her blonde wig at my windshield. Spooked, I stepped on the gas, maneuvering out of the lot before speeding home. Evelyn called me later that day, telling me that she checked the security cameras from the night before. Apparently, the woman climbed into the back of my truck and urinated in the truck box.
Oh.
Sure enough, the bed of my truck was soiled, and a couple of fake fingernails also littered the back. Disgusted, I hosed it off and just tried to forget about it. Luckily, so far, the woman has not shown back up, but it still remains a mystery why she targeted me specifically. I now check my trunk bed every time before leaving work.
Ooh. No, no, thank you. Shout out to MJB Animations. They are the ones that I got this from. So subscribe them, get their stuff.
We know
But that was creepy. I couldn't talk too much through it. Got you guys missing words, but it's creepy how she picked exactly just him. That's odd. I'd say I'll give that one a 10 out of 10 for our first on the scary scale of us being back. All right. Thank you all for watching. I hope you had an amazing time. I will see you next time. Bye bye.